This was not the plan for the video this week, but Space Marine 2, ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard of Warhammer 40K? If you hadn't heard of it before this game coming out, I'm sure you've heard of it by now. I had one dude who was constantly trying to convince me to get into this game, the universe for it, and I had heard about it with some of the previous games that had come out, but I had never really looked into it or gotten past that. That was until Space Marine 2. And I got to give a shout out to the community of this game because they were the ones who sold me on it. I had seen so many reels and shorts of people praising everything about this game. It's going to be Game of the Year. The hype was just monumentous. They put full glory to the Emperor and gassed it up, so much so that I had to try it out or at least start looking into it. And then when I had seen reviews like PC Gamer giving it a 6 out of a 10, contrasting to what the players are actually experiencing and what I'm hearing in all the comments, what everybody's telling me across the board. So I had to try it out myself and experience it, and I am so glad that I did. For those of you who haven't gone down this rabbit hole yet, let me save you some time with a little overview while helping you to determine if you really want to drop 70 bucks on this game, because that's the main question that I've been getting from everybody. Is it actually worth it? And in my opinion, while it is an expensive game, you're really here kind of paying for a high-quality experience that's not really wasting your time. It's just there to have fun on and experience. And if you've heard people saying that this is how games used to be, I think it's because it's just a done game with no microtransactions. You actually have to play the game instead of pay. Therefore, they don't have to make the game a bad experience to force you to pay money. This is essentially an epic campaign game, which I played co-op with 2 of my friends, which is the max size that you can also play with for it, and how I would recommend playing it if you're going to, but you can do it solo as well. It also has a multiplayer PvE, 3-man groups doing 20 to 40 minute missions or so with different classes on the mission that you can play as that increase in difficulty, and PvP with those same classes where you're forced to then test your skills against other players, progressing through and unlocking, playing through team deathmatch, domination, and hardpoint essentially are the modes. But I feel like one of the main reasons that this game is just getting so much praise is because it is a done experience at launch, especially with all of the early access stuff that we've been playing over, the recent years, and even games that are fully done but still kind of in early access. Besides a couple server disconnects as I was queuing into game, this ran so well. And by them not making experiences that are just there to pad time to get you to play the game longer, I feel like a lot of games now are trying to become the next 1,000-hour game, live service, consume your whole life, take over everything. This is at peace in the most violent way possible, but it lets you enjoy the experience for what it is. It doesn't force more on you than it needs to be. They don't make the experience worse so that you have to go get a double XP to experience what the game should be like, although maybe it would be better to unlock stuff faster in multiplayer. I haven't gotten too far in that, although I'm going to be playing it all day tomorrow. We'll see how far I get. I at least have got to play all the modes, classes, and so I will touch on that. But Space Marines 2 lets you have it and then keeps on ramping up the intensity. I don't think this is a perfect game. I definitely can't give it a 10. And while the experience that they provide is truly incredible, they also don't give you enough of it. Maybe that's a good thing, where they leave you wanting more rather than just giving you too much that you don't even want, but they're also charging you a lot for it. I really think it depends on what kind of player you are and gamer in terms of how much you're going to get out of it, but realistically, I do still think there is a lack of content. It's a 6 to 8 hour campaign, which to me is actually perfect. I think some of the shorter style ones from a COD are a great experience, kind of in this same vein, especially some of the older ones where you get this great experience, but they're very short, at 3-4 hours maybe. But some of the games that I've played go way too long, especially some of the open worlds, like playing through Halo Infinite's campaign, I thought could have just been like some of the older Halos, honestly. I got a lot of those vibes playing with my buddies going through the campaign here. A lot of people have been equating this to Gears of War with it as well, but solid campaign, 2 to 3 hours of unique PvE co-op type content after you complete the campaign. Most people will probably want to grind it a bit for additional classes and unlocks, especially if you don't want to do PvP. There's 6 different unique missions that are in the game. The multiplayer is kind of what caught me off guard, though. Considering there's only 3 maps, 3 modes, you could probably get a good 10 hours of experience, like just getting your feel for the game to see if you want to continue on with it and then grind and get the rest of the unlocks for it, though. They do have a roadmap as well that's going to be coming. It's not going to be until about Season 4 that a Horde mode is coming. Many people seem excited for it, and I think that could give it a lot more of that infinite replayability element to it. I'm sure if you're already a Warhammer 40k fan too, you already know all about this game. Hell, you're probably already playing it and just want to see what I think about it as well. Being a new player, I will say majority of the 40k fans have at least been very welcoming to me, although I've seen some memes of the contrary as well. The nice thing was, going into the campaign, I didn't need to actually play the first one to enjoy this. And I did watch some lore and story recap from the first one, so I knew what was going on. If you do want to do that, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to get into spoilers of the campaign as we go through this, but the best way that I can summarize this experience is like watching an incredible trailer, but it's the entire game. It was mind-blowing. Seeing all of these games come out and reveal such incredible trailers like Star Wars Outlaws, to then see the gameplay that is just not that. It is refreshing to go into a game, and the whole time, like, I kept on getting more amazed right from the intro, seeing the swarm and hordes of enemies all the way till that final mission. I think the visuals, and this, Tom mentioned it as like a Disneyland ride experience, was just, you just wanted to look everywhere and absorb it all, even when you were in the middle of a fight with a boss or in the most insane action. That was something that I always loved about the Titanfall 2 playthrough that I did years ago, as well as like the scale that you were at. It really felt like a war in many of the elements of these fights. And while you're strong, you have a base health bar that will go down. You need to find syringes to heal up. You have a base armor layer that's over that if you successfully pull off a counter, a dodge, will regenerate that shield, protecting your base health, which also brought me back to a lot of Halo vibes. But then pulling off those counters were even better, because you whip out your gun, you perfectly time and grab something out of the air for a counter, smash it on the ground. The gameplay was so satisfying, while also not being restricted just to the pistols and assault rifles. It was also your melee, depending on which weapon, doing light, heavy combinations. It wasn't super deep in that aspect, but having to choose between the different options and conserving ammo or your grenades led for a very fun loop while you're going through everything. It wasn't just completely mindless walking through it. I feel like watching the gameplay, that was the experience that I saw, especially from other people, was like, they just looked, you were face bashing everything. But then when you were experiencing it, it felt even better. The game's compared a lot to Gears of War, understandably, with even just the feel of it and the chainsword that you're using. I am kind of excited to see the new Gears of War that is coming and how it's going to differentiate from this game. And while I had to change a lot of my keybinds to make it actually feel more fluid, like even making right click for aim down sight was not the default, which is weird. I got it all figured out on mouse and key. It probably would be a better experience on the controller. I'd say after an hour or two, I was quite fluid with the controls, but then by that time they threw a new class on you with different abilities, and the way that we were even playing in co-op campaign was kind of cool, because we were each playing our own character, and they each kind of had moments throughout it, so then we could kind of rag on each other while we were doing it. It was really good, although only one person is playing as Titus, the main character, through it, of course. But then making one weak, calling out so another player could go get the execute to get their shields up, and working together as a team in that capacity felt really good. That's why I'd recommend it, you know, to play as a squad in general, and then you get to enjoy all the sights and everything together with the buddies. Tom even played through with no HUD for the entire time, so we had to tell him when he was low health. But a lot of the moments in the game actually automatically take the HUD away, so you can just be fully immersed in it. And it was very helpful having it on to see the reload timer. Sometimes it's hard to tell in third-person shooters when these animations and actions are coming across, but they did a very good job of showing that to you, as well as parrying. That was a lot easier than I anticipated it to be. You would see it from the blue flash that would occur, but even if there wasn't a blue flash, if you just saw somebody swinging on you and you hit the parry timer correctly, you would counter them, opening up for an exposed shot for extra damage. Now, they don't have that in the multiplayer side of things, which I'm kind of disappointed by, but I also understand that could probably be a lot more challenging. You can still counter and stop attacks from coming in, but you're not doing the full-on execution animations that you would see in this, which, yeah, that's kind of disappointing. I always like executing people in Warzone, for example. I also felt like, and I think it was just partly the enemy types that we were fighting. As we got later in the campaign, I would have loved to see more of the hordes coming in still. They left that much more for the early enemies that you were fighting. But that's also when they ramp up the scale of some of the enemies you're fighting, and it does get insane in its own right. The other thing that I'd say I didn't like about the campaign was a lot of the loot that was on the ground. It didn't really feel like it was upgrading me that much, especially once I had all of the weapons. It was mostly to kind of keep the ammo flow going, but at the same time, it's good to have the options and variability for it. So it's like I have to find something to try and dislike about this. You know what I mean? So then for the main multiplayer, they have operations, which is the PvE side multiplayer. You and 2 other players, which you can also matchmake into. Choose any of the 6 operators that you can go in on, each with their own abilities, weapons. Some of the weapons are shared between it, and you're doing missions that are kind of alongside what was happening in the campaign. So while the main characters might have been over here in the war, you were over here supplementing what they were doing. These are all the same classes as the PvP mode, and if you level up one class's weapons, it goes across for the rest of them, which is great. So you don't have to go through and grind absolutely everything. It also shares cosmetics between them, which is a whole nother thing that I absolutely love. You don't need to buy individual packs just to change the color of your guy from black to green. It's in-game currency that you can choose to unlock in pretty much any order that you want. I had enough to unlock exactly the colors that I wanted right off of the bat. But the more you play, you'll earn coins in this or PvP, clear missions, and you can spend them as you like. This PvE mode, though, has its own perks, talent tree that you can spend on, as well as even different ways that you can kind of tune your weapons. Each skill tree has 8 different columns within it, and a player can only activate 1 skill per column at a time, allowing for kind of different builds within each of the classes, and it lets just more customization as you play. Going back to some of the limitations in content, though, this is where I think it may get very repetitive very quickly with only 6 different unique missions that you play, which are all extremely cool, especially the first playthrough. And that's why there is a good solid couple hours of gameplay here, but you also may not want to completely replay it. I know a lot of people have been comparing this to Helldivers 2, and I think one of the strengths in that game was, at least when you're going to a lot of these different planets, they're so massive and different for a lot of even the worlds within it. On top of the missions and tasks that you're trying to complete within it, it doesn't get quite as repetitive. Now, it is nice that within this, the locations of things do change, whether that's power-ups that you'll find along the way. In this mode, there's also armor upgrades that you can get, extra XP that you can find, and if you don't get knocked, you can make it all the way out and get a big bonus for, and it will vary, but it's going to depend on you as a player if you want to go through that and if you are enjoying it. They are going to be releasing more as well with the continued content that they're doing for it, but at least they have a good amount of classes that you can run with the perks and builds and everything, especially with increased scale of difficulty. It may actually be to your benefit and enjoyment that it stays more similar, so you can find ways to actually beat it. Killing boss enemies too allows you to obtain armory data, which can be used to bypass certain XP requirements and even let you upgrade weapons and armor immediately, which is sweet. But it just shows how big and ambitious the scale of this game is, and such a beautifully way that they intertwined these modes together. I think if they do keep adding more missions to this mode, it's just, I mean, especially for a game that's not having any microtransactions, plus the DLCs already included in the game in the first place, it's something that most games as of late have just completely stepped away from doing. Packing on the pay to win, and oftentimes it being in detriment to the base fun of the game. But where most of the longevity lies in these types of games, at least for me, is in the PvP modes. And the fact that you just even have all of the different characters unlocked right from the beginning. Of course, you still have to work your way, level them up, unlock new weapons for them. It's just so great to have the options. Unlike an annoying amount of PvP multiplayer games these days, there's no microtransactions, which means as you're playing and leveling up through the game, it should be an enjoyable experience. And even right at the beginning, only level 4 is required for the sick-ass Thunderhammer. I just keep feeling compelled to play more, to level up, to get the next unlock, to try it for this specific class and see how much better it is. Can I pop off and do my own thing? It's great. And each of them has quite a unique play style that I do think has a lot of room for abuse. I started with the Heavy, which has extra health on top of a giant shield that you could spawn in and one-way shoot through. The other Heavy being the Bulwark, which has a shield making everything immune that you're shooting at in front of you. Even a grenade goes off right in front of you, completely blocks it. Bulwark also slamming a heal down. You can out heal while you're shooting through. Sounds crazy, right? But then there's another guy, the Vanguard and Sniper, both only have 2 extra armor, so they're far weaker, half the shields, but they do significantly more damage. While of course you still have kind of the tactical and assault classes be in the middle of the road, 3 armor. And of course, when you're low armor, you're much faster. Vanguard even having a grappling hook. You shoot, connect to the guy, stun him, shoot it up on a wall, just use it for some mobility to get around the map, get to the objectives faster, pull off an incredible flank. With that mobility, you can double roll as well. And then that melee that I talked about in campaign and co-op, very good against AI, but actually incredible against players as well. It's still part of the game. Of course, it doesn't have all the executions. I do miss that, but when that Bulwark's got his shield up, you can do a heavy to break the shield and get right through that. So you kind of have this chess match that's happening between the different characters, which each have their strengths and weaknesses that you can play around depending on which role that you are. But then you have that same element for the range, close range, even utilizing the grenades, which are incredibly powerful shock nades to stun them, while not really being overcomplicated in what it is, right? Especially on Warzone, you constantly have to look up builds for 5 different attachments. We even use 10 different attachments that you need on a gun. This having higher health pools too, still can have instantaneous deaths. There's this fire shotgun that I've seen one-shotting, even two-shotting people. If you can level up high enough on the heavy fast enough early in this game, it might be pretty powerful. But then you play long range enough with a sniper that's literally invisible, then you can land a couple headshots and take them out as well. Like, this is, I want to keep on playing this, even though, you know, there's no rank, there's no competitive. I don't think it's trying to be an esport. This is something that I've been talking about a lot more, especially as of late with all of these games that I've played, going more into the competitive scene. I stopped playing ranked ever since the first season of Apex, and I just want to enjoy and experience a game. I feel like that's what this is going for more so. Maybe I'm putting myself too much onto it. You guys tell me what you think. But the nice thing is, as well, if you pull yourself out of combat for a bit in this, you don't need to have syringes. Your armor goes up, and if you wait long enough, your health bar goes up as well. There's 2 different kind of factions that you're playing as the Loyalist or the Chaos Marines, and you can customize them both separately as well, which is awesome. Every match you play, you're gaining experience. The more that you play, the more you'll earn, progress through the unlocks, which does seem to be just a steady tree that you go through. Once you hit a certain level, you get certain item unlocked for a specific class, so it kind of forces you around to the different classes if you want to experience the new stuff as you get it. Winning matches also unlocks customization for cosmetic options for different weapons, which of course only affects how you look, nothing else. There's not really any attachments for the guns. It's just changing out the specific gun or melee weapon or equipment that, again, everything has its trade-offs for. Future me here with some updates on the PvP. I did notice very long load times, which were kind of good when I had to go help out the family in between it, but in terms of just trying to grind a bunch of XP, felt a little tedious, especially the cutscene going into each of the maps for how long you got to play it. I also noticed joining a lot of games that were already going where you were completely getting steamrolled, and because there's no real disincentive to leaving the games, also when your team is getting completely crushed, it's pretty common to have 1 or 2 people just leave, or the team to just give up and let yourselves get obliterated, especially since the team balance doesn't seem to always be great. You can only queue in with 3 people at a time, but there was a couple times that I went in where there was a 14, 15, and 16 level, and my team's just a bunch of level 3 to 8s, and they've got a little bit better equipment. Clearly, they're playing together and coordinated. But then there's also the opportunity for you to even rally your team and give them some comms to do it, although not too many people are using mics, at least on the PC side of this game. It did seem to only be matching me with PC players as well, even though this is a crossplay game. And then I also wish that I could change my class, or at least even my weapon, while I'm in game. Maybe the class changing would be a little bit too meta, whatever, but sometimes when I stepped away from the game and came back, I didn't get the chance to change something in between it or go to the specific menu to do it. It definitely doesn't feel like it's completely focused on the PvP, but it's that fun extra experience that you can have with it. And it did feel a little slow leveling up and getting some of the unlocks for all the characters. It's going to take a little bit of a grind to get all the things that you would want. The nice thing is the multiplayer, whether you prefer PvE or PvP, does have progression and can greatly extend the life of this game for you. I think a lot of people are going to grind the hell out of this game. For me personally, I don't see it being something that I could grind for 100 or even 200 hours, but to touch on my summary earlier, is probably a solid 20 to 50 for me. And I think it's a very high quality one, with a different style that I at least haven't seen for a very long time, versus what I was even talking about with X Defiant when that came out in its first beta a year or whatever ago. It just felt all so similar to COD that I've experienced so many times, at least personally. It just, I really hadn't had much interest and still don't in it. This is at least a completely different way to play, with really, I think, even just the campaign alone being such a great experience that and then it even feels like just enough of a tutorial to get you into game. Like, this is the experience that I used to remember playing on games in the past. You play through a cool campaign, love it, and be like, oh, I want to keep on playing. What? Now you could go into PvP, go up against people. Now I know all the controls. I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit. Let's see. Oh, damn, that guy's really good. Now I got to see if I can get better, see if I can compete with them. What build? What's he using? Oh, I got to get to level 20, get that shotgun unlocked. Let's try that. There it is. Like, and you don't have to pay to unlock the battle pass to get the weapon, to get the attachments on it or nothing. It's so sweet, man. I think that's why it's just getting so much praise. And like I said, I wasn't even planning on to make a video on this, but I wanted to put a couple of my thoughts together on it. I'm sure you've seen a lot of videos on it. Hopefully this insight was fun, a little extra for you. If you enjoyed it, give it a like.
And, Space Marines, I'll see you out there, brother!